morning, everybody, and welcome to the show. Fernando?
Welcome to the show.
Very peppy today. I know what you're thinking. You might recognize this truck from previous videos and the fact that it's an F-150, but that's okay. That's not the purpose of the show. It's just what's here. The purpose of the show is this set of speakers right here. This is an Alpine set of speakers. And again, that's not even really the purpose of the show. It's the type of speaker that it is. It's a question we get a lot of times, and we always give you answers, the brands and options. But today we're going to talk about this because it's what's going in this, and it answers the question. What is the question? Where do I put those big passive crossovers? Do I need them? What am I thinking? And we always say, well, you know, a lot of manufacturers now make speakers where the passive crossovers are broken into their components, and you don't have to mount big boxes and doors and do all that silliness. This is a perfect example of that. Today, that's what we're gonna do. I'll see you after the intro. When we look at this door, both the tweeter and the mid-range, this guy here and this guy here, are both located in the same place. That means that more than likely that passive crossover has to go somewhere in here. It doesn't always have to. If you want to run wires into the door, of course you could put it somewhere in the vehicle, but you can't always do that because of the way the boot is designed. In some cases it plugs in and there's no extra wiring available for you to do that, which means it's gotta go here. The joy of being an installer for as long as I have, I've seen some really interesting things done with crossovers. I've seen people take the bags that the crossovers come in and wire up the whole thing and then put the bag back over and put duct tape all over them and drop them here in the bottom of the door. Put like double-sided tape on them, or that 3M strip caulk that we use, and they just stick them in the bottom of the door, which lasts for about, until the first rainstorm. And then every time you shut the door, you hear a clunk because the crossover's smacking around. And of course, that plastic bag never lasts because once the tape fails, then the crossover starts moving around, which then rips the bag or whatever, and so the water gets trapped inside the bag. And of course, it's a bag, so it never dries, so moisture. And what you end up with is just this rusted mess of crap that your really expensive passive crossovers are now useless. Needless to say, it's a bad idea. However, if you do have to mount your passive crossovers in the door, a better alternative is to find something that is on the opposite side of the vapor barrier in the door. When you take a door panel off, there's typically some form of plastic that keeps the water from touching the door panel. Somewhere in this area here would be a good place to mount a passive crossover so that it doesn't get wet. We also recommend, if we have to do that, we'll buy a plug so that you can unplug the whole passive crossover when you take the door out. You want to firmly mount it to the structure. But today we're not going to have that problem because we chose a set of speakers that does away with the big passive crossover box. Let's go unbox these Alpines and I'll show you what I'm talking about. The first question we should answer before we start is the basic one. What is a crossover? A crossover is what tells the speakers to play the specific frequencies that they need in order to perform the way they're designed. So for example, a tweeter has a specific crossover that's going to limit its performance, meaning let's say from 5,000 hertz on up or from 3,200 hertz on up, it's just going to play those frequencies. And then the mid-range is going to play from typically those frequencies down to a certain point, let's say between 100 and 80 hertz. And then you have your subwoofer, which usually plays up to where your mid-range stops, 70 to 80 hertz, somewhere in that range. This box is an example of a two-way passive crossover. And that brings us to the next question. Passive versus active. Passive is where you use caps and coils, these things here, in order to achieve the proper crossover frequency limitation on your speaker. This is an example of a 12 dB crossover network. There's several different. A 6 dB would either be a cap or a coil. A 12 dB would be a cap and a coil. And of course it goes up from there with different configurations. 18 obviously would be a cap, coil, coil, cap, cap, coil. 24 would be two caps, two coils. We won't get into crossover design. Not that important for what we're doing. However, this is a 12 dB two-way passive crossover. An electronic crossover does away with this altogether, and it uses software built into a device that then does what this is designed to do. Are there differences between passive and active? Sometimes in the power, this is going to consume some power, so that might rob you of that precious volume, but it's very minuscule. It's overrated for sure at how much power this does consume. What a passive crossover typically has is some form of an input. This is what's called a biampable passive crossover, which means we have an input for a tweeter, an input for a mid-range, and then the same outputs here. This is configured to be a non-biamped right now because it has these two jumpers in there. Most passive crossovers come this way in the sense that you have two inputs, a positive and a negative, and then four outputs, two for the tweeter, two for the mid-range. And this is for a standard two-way setup. If you're going with a three-way setup, obviously there'd be more connectors here to do that. Where the fun lies in a passive crossover is, where do you put it? Where does it go? It's pretty. Most manufacturers do a really nice job of designing it and making it look sexy. However, this particular speaker is the S65C, or components. All of Alpine speakers now use crossovers just like the ones we're going to show you, of various degrees. They've gone to a full split system now with everything, so whether you're buying an R, an S, or an X, you'll end up with the same results. You have a good, better, best scenario available to you, and they're not the only ones that do this. In the box, as always, you're going to find your warranty card. For this, the instruction manual is located on the back of the box. On the foam, you have different tweeter mounts here, some tweeter foam, your screws. They're all located in these hidden pockets on the side of the box. Once you open the box, you'll find both of your tweeters. One thing Alpine does do extremely well is their mounting system. They have several different mounts. As you can see with this, there's lots of tabs that you can break off to figure out different mounting configurations, and also the tweeter comes all the way down apart to its smallest form factor, which is really nice. Its flush mount configuration is equally enjoyable. This pocket over here has the threaded back piece for this. You typically go into a hole, you screw this on, and your tweeter is mounted firm and secure. This bag here has the passive crossovers located in it for the tweeters. These are an inline that just plug into the tweeter and will accomplish the high pass crossover that the tweeters require. I do recommend keeping this in a dry location because it is just shrink wrap tube. It's made to be as small as possible. The speaker itself comes with this universal trim bracket here. And as far as Alpine technology goes, it uses their new surround, which has this cool ribbed to it, which is to help the excursion, makes the woofer sound better, helps to limit twist or anything like that. But on the back of the driver, we'll also see another piece of the crossover here, which is for the mid-range. They also give you, on the speaker itself, extra terminals. What this is designed for is you have your two inputs here for your powered inputs, and you have two inputs here that you can attach the tweeter crossover to, so that you can just come right off of this up to your tweeter if you don't have existing wire to be used. What this allows us to do is mount this in the bottom speaker location, attach this wire, run it up to our tweeter, and we're done. We have no big passive crossover to mount. So as you can see, that's pretty handy. So let's get these speakers out, this door off, and we'll take you through the process of installing the new speakers. To get this door panel off, we have to start by removing this speaker. This comes out, then we can get the whole rest of this out. We have to take this out and off so that we can get to this tweeter. Ford is not silly, and they are using the same basic design that we're going to be replacing it with. Your passive crossover is built onto the back of the speaker. Nothing new. They've been doing it for a while. Behind the panel by the handle is two 8mm. A simple flat pry tool will go into this notch here and allow you to get that down. Just be careful, don't press too hard. You don't want to break off the little tooth. Plastic pry tool come at the corner of the window switch. Lift up, that will come out. 4 harnesses that you need to unplug. Behind that is another 8mm. There is a plastic gasket inside. Remove that. There's these 4 rubber grommets that the screws go into. Those also need to be removed on the bottom so that we can lift the door up. You can use a pry tool for that. They do take some effort, so the metal one works the best. There's 2 more screws located here on the bottom, and those are a 6mm. Pull up from the bottom, door panel will come right off. There's a clip here at the back. The whole handle just pops off and passes through. You don't need to pull it out if you don't want to. The tweeter is mounted to the door panel. Let's go set this down and take a closer look at it. The factory tweeter is held in by these 2 little screws here, and the wire runs down and attaches to the mid-range, very similar to the way this Alpine is going to work. Inside the door though, you'll see that vapor barrier I was talking about. Everything on this side is dry. Everything on this side can possibly get wet. That's why all your factory wiring makes all its connections on the dry side and not the wet side. If factory tweeter for this is actually a pretty nice tweeter. It's a dome cloth tweeter, but it's old and it's time to be updated. Looking at the Alpine tweeter versus what we have going on here, the hole is obviously a little small, but the diameter of the flush part is perfect for the Alpine tweeter. You notice this flat area here, which means we'll have to just sand this down flat. To open this hole up a little bit, we'll be using this air die grinder here with an auger bit. When using something like this, whether it be air, rotozip, whatever, don't come at it from the top like this. Always come at it from the bottom. If for some reason, like these tend to get crazy sometimes, if it ever pops out, you run the risk of scratching the top surface, which is bad. By going from the bottom, obviously that won't happen. We're super close to where we need to be. My last step is to take a deburring tool and go around it a couple times. It'll clean up the sanding as well as make the hole just a little bit bigger. Tweeter goes in there nice and flush. As you notice, I did sand the top here flush. I use that cool circular sander there to do that. Put our tweeter back together, drop it back in place. Take our threaded back piece and install that. The tweeter comes with a lot of wiring that we really don't need, and I'm not going to bundle up in the door. The crossover also comes with quite a bit of wiring. We need to shorten this up. On one end, you'll notice it has this staggered one long, one short, which is what matches up to this tweeter one long, one short. That's so you know which direction the crossover needs to go in. There's this area right here, which is where I'm going to put this passive crossover so that it's out of the way. In the box are these two pieces of foam. It's actually a sticker which is made to hold the crossover in place. Clean out the area that you want to stick this thing, peel this off, line it up, and tape it in place. Tweeter portion is all set. The next step is to get the mid-range mounted into place, and for that we can put the door panel back on. With the door panel back on, the last thing we have to do is screw our speaker back in and plug it in. We have a set of leads that we've added to the existing speaker wire that'll plug into two of those connectors, and then the tweeter will plug into the other two. Remember, we showed you these earlier. It doesn't matter which is which. With the speaker screwed into place, on this particular vehicle, we can snap the grill back on. And the only thing left is to sit back, relax, and enjoy the way it sounds. Hopefully this will help you try to decide if you need a speaker like this. If you go to the manufacturer's websites, they'll usually have a picture of a passive crossover or tell you if it comes with a passive crossover or not, as far as whether it's a big box of plastic or if it's split apart like this. If it's not in the picture, then go to the owner's manual. Most manufacturers put up owner's manual that you can download so that you can see what you're dealing with. As you can see from this video, it was very helpful. It made the installation a little bit easier. So if that's something you want to do, well, check it out. And with that,
on to the next one, guys.
You guys have a great night as always. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.